Hello, everyone. Welcome to WaveTalkers Live. This is episode number 113. Today, we're going to be talking about using Winlink with Vara FM and HT radios. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. I'm joined today by my esteemed colleagues, Dan NR6V, David W0DHG, and Scott Cam6RFB. And we're going to get right into today's topic because we've got a lot of information to cover today. So let me jump into, let me go over to the check-in. So if you have access to Winlink, if you've already got it set up, then send us a Winlink check-in. Send it to all four of our call signs. It's W0DHG, NR6V, KM6RFB, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. Use the standard Winlink check-in form, and down in the comments section, let us know what your favorite handheld radio is and why. While you're doing that, what we'll do is we're going to jump over to my Winlink setup here, and we'll walk through that check-in process together. So let me switch over to that machine here. And what I've got is I've got my copy of Winlink set up here. I'm going to come up into the menu bar, click the little new message button. That's going to spring open a new message for you. You're going to come up here to the button that says select template. Go ahead and give that a click. It should open up your template manager. Go ahead and open that up, click the plus button next to it. And then down, you're looking for the general forms. Go ahead and give that a click. And down near the bottom of that, you should find Winlink check-in.txt. Go ahead and give that a double click. Your web browser of choice should open up for you. What you want to do here is always make sure in that date and time field, give that a click, because what that's going to do is it's going to set your computer's current date and time to the date and time inside of the form. That way your check-in will show up in the right location in the form. We'll say, okay, here's the to field. This is where you want to put all of our call signs in. Just separate each of those with a semicolon. Those are W0DHG, NR6V, KM6RFB, W6AH, and our tactical address, WaveTalkers. The next field here is the from. Go ahead and put your call sign in there. In the station contact, go ahead and list your name or your handle. In the initial operators, go ahead and let us know if there are any other operators that are sitting there watching the show with you, whether or not you're here inside of our live Zoom audience, or if you're watching on YouTube, Facebook, or one of the other platforms that we're streaming to. Go ahead and let us know. It's a great time also to give the video a like and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about the show as it's going on. Here's the session type. You want to make sure that you click the box for exercise. And then for service, let us know if you're sending this in via amateur radio or over the shares platform. Then under band, let us know which band you're sending it in for. For instance, if you're using the internet, go ahead and leave it set to Telnet. Otherwise, if you're sending it via HF, VHF, UHF, go ahead and select those. In the session type, let us know how you're transmitting that traffic, whether or not you're using Telnet, Packet, Vara HF, Vara FM, or so forth. Go ahead and just let us know in those. In the location, this is where you want to let us know roughly where you're at. Even if you just let us know what state you're coming from, that's pretty helpful information so we can see it on the map as it comes in. Your latitude and longitude, these should automatically be filled in for you based on your grid square that you filled out when you set up your Winlink account. And you get a little reality check over here on the right that shows your grid square right there. Here's the comment section down here. Let us know what your favorite HT is and why. Mine happens to be my Kenwood D74 that I use. That's one of the radios I really enjoy using all the time. And you can go ahead and leave us more information about that. When you're all finished, hit the submit button. What that's going to do is it's going to bring up a couple of pop-up menus here for you. Just go ahead and keep clicking OK. Eventually, those go away and you end up with a blank browser window. When that happens, close the browser window, and all of the information should be entered here in that Winlink message. It's just a regular email here. Go ahead and hit the post to outbox button in the upper left-hand corner, and you should see your outbox increment by 1. Then what you want to do is you want to come up here to the open session type. Go ahead and give that a click. I'm going to select Telnet and use the internet to be able to transmit this data. I'll go ahead and hit open session. It should pop open a new window and then click the start button. And if the demo gods are with you, your traffic should go out. And it looks like we've got quite a few check-ins that are coming in right now. I'm going to go ahead and download those. And later on in the show, we'll check back in here and we'll map all of the check-ins to see where everyone is coming in from all around the world. In the meantime, let's get back into today's topic. Excuse me. So today we're going to be talking about these using Winlink with Vara FM and HTs, but not just any HTs. We're really going to focus a lot more on coming up with low-cost options for you to be able to get Winlink up and running with a handy talkie or an HT. Now, many of us, when we first get started in ham radio, our very first radio is oftentimes an HT radio. So let's show you how you can step through and be able to use that to send Winlink traffic. So when you're setting up to use Winlink, you obviously need a copy of Winlink. You can get this at winlink.org and you can download and install it. You will need your call sign to be able to set it up. And if you go back and watch episode 1, we go through a detailed walkthrough as to how to do that. Vara FM, likewise, if you just do a search using your favorite search engine, look for Vara FM. It'll take you to Jose's website and you're able to download a copy of Vara and get that installed. We've done several shows to walk you through that process as well. So these are the two core components to making all of this work. Now, Vara FM and Vara in general only runs on Windows. There's not a version that runs on the other platforms. So you are going to need a copy of Windows in order to be able to make all of the connections and make the links and make Vara actually work. Now, there are other applications that you're able to use. For instance, if you have the Radio Mail application on an iOS device, and you want to use Vara FM, then what you're doing is you're connecting to Vara FM on a Windows machine that is then sending that connection out and doing the connection. And that's just one of the idiosyncrasies of Vara itself. But that's how that's going to work. And we're gonna look at a lot of the detailed settings for Windows inside of walking through this entire setup. The next piece you're going to need is you're going to need a sound card. Now, a lot of people start to think that, hey, I've got a TNC or a terminal node controller that goes along that's either built into my radio. For instance, the Kenwood D74 and D75 have a built-in TNC right in that HT. The problem is that Vara uses a sound card interface to do all of its modulation, demodulation, and be able to send all of the traffic and receive it. So you are going to need a sound card. And a lot of people say, hey, but I've got a built-in sound card in my computer. Really what you want is an external sound card that you're able to better control and set all the right levels and control with your radio. And we're going to walk through a couple of examples for that. One of which is going to be what's called an AIOC, or an all-in-one cable. Now, this is a relatively new device on the market. It's by a ham whose call sign is November Alpha 6 Delta, or NA6D. And you can find information about this interface at their website at na6d.com. And we're going to do some demos with this today. Another one of these low-cost ones is the DigiRig, and you can get that at digirig.com. This is a small audio interface. Here, I'll switch over to my setup here so you can see how small the DigiRig is. It is this big. This is my AIOC right here, and this is the DigiRig. And so it is a really, really tiny little device. But on the one side, it's got USB-C. On the other side, it's got both an audio connection and a serial connection. More on this in a little while. The other device that I've got here, and I'll bring up the screen here in just a second, this is one of the early prototypes of the DigiRig Lite. And Scott will be showing us the new version of this, which comes with the built-in cable and integration. So these are really tiny devices. The nice thing about all three of these devices is you can pick all three of them up for under $50 each, which ends up getting us into that low-cost interface. And we'll go into a little more detail as the show goes on. This is what the full production version of the Digirig Lite looks like. Basically, inside of this central little bead here is got that interface board that you were just looking at, and then it's got an integrated cable with ferrites on it, and it's got USB-C on one side, and then an audio input jack for a TRS signal cable on the other side. So that's the sound cards we're going to be looking at. There's also other ones that are out on the market for sound cards that are external that'll work with a variety of different radios, such as the Signal Link. There's some by Master Communications, and there are a few others out on the market, but these are the ones we're going to focus in on today. The next piece that you need is your audio in and out cables and also control for PTT, or push to talk. Now, each radio that you have is going to have unique cables that are going to work with that device, with that radio, and different devices may need different cables to go with them as well. We'll talk about those in a little more detail as the show goes on as well. Finally, you're going to need a radio, and there are a variety of radios out there that you can use, a bunch of HTs or handy talkies. Now, these are great little radios, and they range in price from anywhere from $20 or so on up to the top end and in the $500 and $600 range for some of them. Pretty much all HTs will work with one or more of the different devices. And we'll talk about how you determine which device is going to work with your radio. Now, this is the overall signal flow that we're going to be looking at. So from the radio, you're going to have your audio, your IO, which has got your push to talk on it so that you're able to key the radio and you're able to transmit audio and all of the data that's going to go out as your Winlink message. You'll have your audio interface, whichever one that you choose to have connected. That's going to be connected to your computer, more than likely through a USB connection. All three of these that I'm showing today, these all have USB connections. There are some of the other devices that can connect through a serial port if your computer only has access to a serial port. But for the most part, most of these devices these days are all connecting via USB. Once that signal gets into the computer, then you need to be able to manage the settings for that device directly inside of the Windows Sound Control Panel. Now, this is one of these places that a lot of people kind of miss the step here, because you really need to go, when you plug in a new device, make sure you go into that sound control panel. We'll show you where those settings are and how you make them here in a second, to make sure that that device is tuned up, ready to go. That will then connect over to your Vara FM software that you need to install. And your Vara software is not only going to look to the correct sound card for its audio in and out, but it will also look to the device in order to make a connection, in order to control the push to talk for the radio. And we'll show you what that looks like as well. Finally, Vara is going to connect up to Winlink Express. And so that kind of works up this signal chain all the way here to the top. So let's start at the top, and we're going to work our way down through all of these different settings so that you can make sure that your system is fully up and running so you can do your Vara settings. So we're going to start here in Winlink. When you open Winlink, where I just showed you where you can go in and select the telnet and open the session, one of the options in there is to select your Vara FM. When you select that and hit open session, it's going to bring up a window that looks something like this. Now, there are a couple of key places that you need to make sure that you're setting. First of all, you need to be able to choose the gateway that you're going to be connecting to. Now, all of the gateways are going to be already showing up inside of Winlink. When you click this button up here that says Channel Select, if you don't have an updated channel list, then Winlink will automatically just check onto the internet. It will grab the latest listing. It'll download those. And so all of those are available to you. If you are out in the field, once you've been able to make some Winlink check-ins, then you're able to have a listing built in. Once you find some gateways that are in your area that you can connect to, then you can go down here and you can favorite some of those gateways. There's an add to favorites button right over here. And then you end up with this drop down list. So it's very easy to quickly select one and then activate that gateway by clicking the select. What that's going to do is it's going to enter that gateway's information here into the connection window. And what you'll see is you'll see the the call sign of the gateway here, and over on this right side, you'll see the frequency that that gateway is operating on. Now, here is a difference between using Vara FM and Vara HF. On Vara HF, Winlink will automatically control your radio and it'll adjust your VFO in order to jump to the correct frequency. With Vara FM, that cat control doesn't exist. So what you need to do is manually set your radio to the frequency that you see here. You just put your radio in VFO mode and just type in the frequency using whatever settings that you need to on your particular radio. You don't need a tone or anything like that. You can also save that frequency into a memory if it's a common one that you're going to use on a regular basis. And we really suggest you do that as well. So these are two things that you're going to need to do each time you go to connect, as long as you're, if you're moving around, that you're making sure that you're choosing an appropriate gateway that's within your range and you're setting the frequency for that gateway. The first time you go and set this up for your interface, you will also want to click on the settings button up here, and you want to go in and modify the settings. Now, what this is going to look like is it's going to bring up a window that looks something like this. And this is the Vara FM setup. Basically, all you're doing in this window is you're telling Winlink where your copy of Vara FM is located on your hard drive and how to connect to it. So if you recall earlier, I mentioned that maybe if you're using radio mail and you're connecting via network and using another Windows machine that's connected to Vara, that you would use this IP address here and put that IP address for that other Windows machine on your network. For the most part, though, everybody's going to leave your IP address here set to 127.0.0.1, and this is the default. It shows up for you automatically like this. That just means your home local computer. Under the virtual TNC command port, that is also automatically filled in for you. Take note here, though, that this is set to 8300. When we look at the Vara settings, you'll see where that gets reflected, and those two numbers just need to match. But it does come up like this by default. Here's the path for your Vara FM, and this is pretty much the only thing that you have to fill in on this page when you open it up brand new fresh. Wherever you install your Vara FM, you just need to put in the full path. So we always suggest you install Vara FM right in the root of your C drive, and then it'll automatically create your Vara FM folder with varafm.exe. You just go ahead and type that whole path right in there. I suggest having both of these options checked here, so automatically launch Vara FM when it's needed. So when you click on that open session, your Vara FM is going to automatically open for you. And then you definitely want to have this show Vara FM TNC screen when it's launched. And what that just means is it's going to show you Vara FM and not load it down in your taskbar. All right, so that's all the settings inside of Winlink. And once you get this set up, you pretty much never have to touch these settings because now Winlink knows where your copy of Vara is. So let's dive into Vara settings. So when you open up Vara, you'll have a Vara setup window that you'll need to go in. And here's that TCP port at 8300. Remember that number? So you're going to just make sure that that matches what you have set up in Winlink. The rest of these settings is pretty straightforward. You're going to set the FM system. I like setting this to wide. Now, you can get really specific. The two options are wide and narrow. Narrow is going to have a lower bandwidth, and it's going to be a little bit slower. What wide will do is it will, if the device can support wide, it will favor the wide setting, which is going to have a little bit faster bandwidth. If your radio and so forth doesn't support that, or the interface doesn't support it, it'll automatically gracefully fall down to the narrow. Likewise, if the gateway that you're connecting to is only set on a narrow bandwidth, it will automatically adjust to that. So setting it for wide tends to work just fine. The only other thing really to set in here is your retries, and that's usually set to about 6 or so. What that's going to do is it'll try multiple times if it's not getting a connection to be able to do that. All right, so the next screen is your sound card settings inside of Vara FM. And this is where things start getting to a little bit of a different setting. So if you're using one of these AIOC or the all-in-one cables, then what you want to do is in the device input and in the device output, when you click those drop downs here, you want to select the audio interface that in the parentheses says AIOC audio. You'll also want here in the channel so that it's set to both the left and the right audio. And that's just configuring how Vara is going to talk to this particular device. Now, if you're using a DigiRig, then what you'll see inside of the parentheses here for both input and output will say something along the lines of USB PNP, and you want to select both of those. And then down here in the channel, if you're using the full DigiRig, you'll want to select only the left channel. If you select the left and right, it'll kind of work, but it can run into issues where if you just set it to the left channel, it tends to work a lot better for you and a lot more reliably. Now, if you're using the DigiRig Lite, then what you select here in the audio input and output, in the parentheses, it's going to say USB audio device. Those are the ones you're going to select. And once again, for the DigiRig Lite, you'll select the left and right audio. All of these are dependent on the chipset that's used inside of the device that the manufacturer chose to include, and that determines how they're going to function. So that's the settings there. The third page that you need to go to inside of your Vara FM settings is the one that says PTT, and this is telling Vara how to key your radio. Now, if you're using the AIOC, you'll select the COM setting here, and you want to make sure just the DTR setting is selected. You don't need RTS, and you don't need the bottom setting, which is RTS DTR. If you're using the DigiRig, there's a radio button here for RA board. Go ahead and select the RA board, and then there's nothing else to set. It just handles that based on the chipset that the DigiRig is using. If you're using the DigiRig Lite, once again, you'll select the COM port. You'll select the appropriate COM port here. And then for the DigiRig Lite, you're going to want to select the bottom option, which is the RTS and DTR setting. So each of those three have three slightly different settings. Now, if you have a different interface, such as a signal link or master communications device, those settings will be slightly different than these. So each one is going to work in a slightly different format. However, once you set these settings, and this is for both the sound controls and for the PTT for a particular device, what's great about this setup is that you don't have to change those settings from one device to from one radio to another, as long as you're always plugging in to that same device. And we'll show you how that works here in just a little while. Now, when it comes to Windows, what you want to do is you want to go to the sound control panel, and this is not just the sound settings. You want to go to the actual sound control panel. So let me switch back over to my PC here, and I'll walk you through how to find that. So I'm going to quickly my mic over here so you're able to hear me nicely. Let me go ahead and minimize, or I'll go ahead and close the telnet session, minimize that here. Now, what you want to do is I'm going to click on my my start menu, and I'm going to just go to my settings. Now, this is running on Windows 11, Windows 10. There's a variety of ways you can get to this device. I'm going to click on System here, and then scroll down just a little bit in System, and you'll find Sound. Now, if you're used to using Windows 11, this is going to feel pretty common here. But if you scroll down a little bit further, go down below the input settings, go down below, you're looking for advanced, come down to the bottom of advanced, and you'll see more sound settings. Go ahead and click on that. And what that's going to do is it's going to open up your sound control panel. And there's two places, a couple of things that you need to focus on inside of this. Let me jump back over to the slides, and you're able to see these. So the first thing that you want to make sure, and this is where 9 times out of 10, you're going to get things are not going to work properly. And that is right here, both in the playback and in the recording settings. You'll see this little circle here with the green check. Okay. And what that is telling you is that this device, Windows is using it as the default audio device and the default communications device. You cannot have that set for the device that you're connecting to your radio. So what you want to do is just find one of the other default one of the other built-in sound cards right click on it, and there's an option in there for set as default sound and default communications device. So you'll just go in. So I have my built-in speakers and my Surface here. I've just right clicked on it, selected default communication. And so it moves that green check mark down to this other location. You need to do that for both the playback and for the recording settings. Make sure that your settings are like that. Remember when I said what you're selecting in the Vara settings is in the parentheses? Well, here it is right here. So this is the settings for the AIOC, and you can see in gray right here, it says AIOC audio. So that's indicating that is the device that you're looking for. So you want to make sure it is not the default device. The next thing is you want to make sure that there's no AGC. When you go into the playback window, you'll click through each of the different tabs on the property. You can get into that by just double clicking it and look and see if there's a setting in there for AGC. And if so, make sure that is unchecked. Third one is to set your levels. And this is a little bit more advanced, but basically you can just, you can start off with having, let me go ahead and show you what that looks like here. We'll jump back over to here. So here's my AIOC. So I'm in the playback tab. I'll just double click on that and I'm going to come over here to levels. So for the audio out on these devices, I typically have my speaker set to 100% and I'll say okay. And then on the recording tab, here's my AIOC. And by the way, you can just right click on this. You can double click on this and you can change the name of it. So instead of having just saying default audio device, you can just change it to the name of the device that you've got. So I've changed mine to AIOC to make it a little bit easier. Here's the listen, and we'll come over here to levels, and I have my microphone also set to 100%. Usually on HTs, that tends to be the setting that's going to work better for you. On other different devices, such as the Signal Link, you may not need them all the way up, and you got little dials on the front of the device to be able to adjust the audio levels with a little more granularity. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Once you have those set, and here, let me show you how that right-clicking on the device here. If I right-click on this device, here's where you can see that set as default device and set as default communications device. You can change from one device to another as long as that green check mark is not on your interface that you're going to use for your radio. All right, so let me close that down. We'll go back over to the slides. The last part of Windows that you want to make sure and double check on is your device manager. And you can get to your device manager by right clicking on your start menu and you'll see device manager listed. Go ahead and just select that. Now, if you're using the AIOC, then what you're going to be looking for is that it'll look like this. It will say other devices, and there'll be a warning in here that there's a runtime error. You can just ignore that. It doesn't cause any grief there. But you'll see in the ports for the COM ports, you want to look and find the COM port that has just shown up on your device. So you can enter that into the COM port settings on Vara FM in that COM port page. You'll also see your sound, video, and game controllers. You'll see the AIOC listed there as well. Now, if you're using the DigiRig or the DigiRig Lite, those will also appear as COM ports. The descriptor for each of those is different, but just look for the new one, whatever one has been set, and just make note of the COM port that has been added. Likewise, there will be the sound, video, and game controllers setting will appear in there as well. Okay, when it comes to the sound card, you need to be able to connect your sound card into your computer. And there's a variety of different cables that you can use, but this is one of the places that also gets people kind of messed up a little bit. So when you connect, you want the shortest cable that you can get, and oftentimes you need to have ferrite beads installed on the cable to reduce any RFI, because your cable, remember, is going to act as an antenna, so it will pick up any of the RF that's being transmitted, and it's going to go into your sound card, and it's going to make kind of or go into your computer, and it's make kind of mess of things. The cables that we like a lot, DigiRig makes some absolutely incredible cables. They're nice and short. I've got a couple of them here. Let me go ahead and switch over to this screen so you can see it. So this is one of the DigiRig cables here. This one happens to be a USB-A to the USB-C, and then the one that I have connected already onto this radio is USB-C to USB-C here. And what's nice about that is it keeps the cable length really short, and the ferrites help to cut down on any RFI. The other thing that you can see here in this shot is that I'm using a 90-degree angle BNC adapter. Now, for all of my radios, I've added a BNC adapter onto the radio itself because it allows me to quickly and easily change antennas, and all of my antennas are set up in this format. Now, the reason that you want to put that 90-degree bend here is, notice I can lay the radio down, and now my antenna and the USB cable are at right angles to each other. And that means that it's going to reduce the impact of the RF going into the cable. If you're, as a new technician, one of the things you were probably taught was to make sure when you're talking on a repeater, just make sure you hold your radio so that the antenna is straight up, so that you can match the orientation of your antenna to the orientation of the antenna on the repeater. That's going to give you the maximum amount of transfer of RF from one antenna to the other. Well, by putting these at 90 degrees to each other, you end up reducing that RFI, and you end up with a more reliable signal as you come out. So that's one of the cheap ways that you can use to fix this. You can also put a 90-degree angle on with a USB adapter onto the devices themselves, but they tend to this ends up being a much more flexible option for you, is to just put this on. The other thing it does is it allows you to lay your radio down, and then you have a much more stable platform to be able to work from. All right, let me go back over to the slides, and that's what that little 90-degree connector is for right there. All right, so the next part is you're going to be able to connect to various different radios. And what's nice about this is you want to make sure that whichever device that you're using, so say the AIOC, then that one is going to connect to other devices that use the Kenwood style plug. So any of the radios that have that same connector, you would be able to swap from one to the other. And I'll show you how that looks and how that functions here in just a little while. It works really pretty well. I'm pretty amazed at how well it does work. If you're using, say, the DigiRig, though, the DigiRig you need different cables. So if we kind of jump over to the next slide here, this is what the AIOC looks like when you look at it a little bit closer. And these are those two connectors. So the top connector here is for your audio out or your speaker settings, and the microphone and PTT is on this smaller pin here. Now, this Kenwood style connector you'll find on most of the Kenwood handheld radios. You'll find it on the Quanshen, the Baofeng, and there are a bunch of other radios that use this particular standard connector. And thus far, I've been finding that the AIOC tends to work with all of them. Because what it's doing is it's putting the audio directly into the radio, and it's just keying the radio by applying a voltage or a voltage drop on the appropriate pin that goes on here. And then right on the side of the connector is where that USB-C connection is as well. On the DigiRig, and the DigiRig Lite, you're going to need to use different cables depending on the different radio that you're connecting to. And I know for me, when I first got the DigiRig, I thought, well, I don't need to buy all of these extra cables. I've got TRRS to TRRS cables. I've got cables that'll do all these different things. Unfortunately, not all cables are created equal. And depending on the radio that you're using, you may find that on, say, the push-to-talk line, there needs to be, say, a 2K resistor installed on it and in line, or on another line that's in there. And so, again, the cables that we have found that work most reliably are the ones from DigiRig themselves, and you can go to their website. They also sell them on Amazon, so you can get them direct from there as well. What's nice about these cables is, first of all, he installs the ferrite beads on each end of the cables. He keeps them nice and short, which makes it nice and easy to be able to manage the cables. And a lot of them he uses these coiled cables for, which allows you to stretch the length of it, but not have everything kind of stretched out all over big pile of messing cables. So what you'll end up doing is you'll find that you end up with quite a few cables depending on the specific radios that you have. Now, if you're using the Kenwood cables that are here, you buy those. They're actually listed as the Baofeng cables on their website. Here, I'll jump over and show you the overhead to this one. There's both a green cable and a black cable that come in the kit. The black cable is the audio cable that does the push to talk and is for doing all of the transmit. If you've got the green cable in the kit, the green cable is just for programming, and the green cable will not work with Vara. You need to use the black one of the pair that he sends. And likewise, there are a bunch of other cables. So for instance, this is the cable set for, say, the KX3 and so forth. So there are a bunch of them out there. The DigiRay cables they're excellent cables. All right. So let's see, where else are we? When it comes to the radio, there are some specific settings that you need to set on the radio themselves. So first of all, as we mentioned already, you need to set the frequency manually. There is no cat control. There is no automatic control of the frequency for Vara FM. So once you dial in that frequency, you're good to go. You don't have to change it. The next, and this is another place that it really messes people up, you want to make sure that you set the squelch on your radio all the way to 0. A lot of people are like, hey, but I don't want to listen to the noise and this, that, or the other, or I didn't really know that was what you need to do. So when you set the squelch all the way to 0, you're not filtering out any audio, because remember how squelch works is squelch is listening for an audio signal to come in at a particular level. Well, if you're talking to a gateway that's a pretty far way away and you just barely have a connection to it, it may not be enough to break the squelch. So if you just turn your squelch all the way to 0, then your radio will be able to hear all the signals that it possibly can, and you'll have a much better time of being able to make the connection to that gateway. If you have the squelch turned up at all, and I'll show you kind of what this looks like, then you also won't be able to calibrate and set your levels correctly inside of Vara. And so that's another problem with that. So make sure it's set to 0. Another one is make sure that you're set to FM modulation. So on our website, on wavetalkers.com, right on the front page right now, and it'll be moved to one of the detail page for this episode later, and I'll put a link on the YouTube page as well, down in the comment section. You want to make sure that you have another version of the firmware if you're using, say, the Quansheng. And when you install the new version of the firmware on the Quansheng, for some reason, it'll automatically default you to an AM mode. So that's one of the things I keep looking at. I'm trying to figure out, why am I not getting any connection? You'll need to just maybe go through the settings, make sure you're set to the FM modulation mode. You don't want to be set to FM digital. Just set it to plain old FM modulation for all of your radios. It should work just fine. Next is setting the audio levels correctly, and I'll show you how this works when I go in to do the demo. But basically what you're going to do is you're just going to use the volume up and down knob on the top, and you'll be watching for the settings inside of Vara using the meters there. We'll walk through that here in a second together. And of course, there may be some other radio-specific settings for your particular radio that might be different from these, but those are the general ones that you're going to be looking for. All right, so you want to practice. You want to set this up, make sure all of your gear is working. One of the troubleshooting tips that I can offer for you also is, if you get everything plugged in and it's not working, try plugging everything in and then restarting your computer, and let Windows just boot up nice and clean with the device connected. Oftentimes that will then resolve the issue. Go through and check your settings inside of your Windows control panel, check your Vara settings. Those are the most common ones that you're going to have. Pretty much your Winlink settings where it's pointing to Vara, you never have to mess with that. So let me step through how to do this demo then on the Quansheng. So let me go back over to this setup here. So on my radio, this is what the AIOC looks like. I'll go ahead and turn the radio off here. You can get it with a 3D printed case on it, or you can just 3D print your own case and just put it over the board as it comes in. These are the two connectors that are on here, and it just has a USB-C port on there. The cable that I'm using is that DigiRig cable. It's just the short USB-C to USB-C cable. So when I plug this into the side of the radio, just make sure it fully seats into the radio. I've got my 90-degree BNC connector here, and I'm just going to go ahead and turn on the radio. I mentioned that there's sometimes some settings that you need to be able to make. Let me go ahead and zoom in a little tighter on this setup so you might be able to see things a little bit better. The display is going to be a little bit hard to read here. But on the display, I'm not seeing any audio levels coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and press, there's 3 buttons here on the side. I'm going to press the middle button, and you'll see that there is a little levels indicator. So that just indicated that I'm now bringing audio in at this point. So everything is configured here on this radio. I am in FM mode, and I'm in low power because I don't need to be transmitting very far. I'm actually just going to transmit over to my own gateway here when I get this up. So let me switch over to my Surface so you can see the settings that are in here. Let me bring Winlink back up. And up here in the open session, I'm going to actually do a quick check so I can download any new messages that have come in, because we do have a lot of check-ins coming in from all over, and I don't want to be hung up with those as they're coming in. So we've got check-ins coming in from all over the planet. Appreciate that. Everybody's sending in their check-ins. And once those come in over the internet, then I won't have that big queue stacked up there. That might take me 2 times of running through that real quick. Joys of doing live shows. There we go. Disconnected. Okay, so we've got those downloaded. So here in the open session, I'm going to click the little drop down menu here, and I'm going to go down to Vara FM Winlink. Click that and click the open session button. Now, this is going to open that Vara FM window, and it's going to open my Vara FM client as well. So here's the session window. Here in the channel selection, I can click on that, and you can see this as the listing of all of those stations. This is that W6AH-10. That's the gateway that I'm going to be connecting to. So I can just double click that, and it'll load it in here. If I wanted to select it from my favorites, I have selected it as a favorite. I've got it right there, and I could add that to favorites if I wanted to. But I've got it right here. This is the gateway that I'm going to connect to, and I need to make sure my radio is set to 145.030. And I'll do a quick check on the radio itself. Make sure that it is on that particular setting there. We can see the frequency that's up there, and this is what the display all looks like on this particular radio. All right, so that's all set there. Just to show you here in the settings, I'll go to the Vara TNC setup, and this is those settings that we saw earlier. That's all set, so I don't need to mess with that at all. Here's my Vara window. So here's my Vara FM. I'm going to come over here to settings, and the top option is the Vara setup. I'll click on that. You can see all those same settings that we just walked through and just showed you. I'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to come back here to settings. Here's that sound card settings. I'm going to click on that. Now, because I changed the name of my sound card to AIOC, it's listed here as the name of the device for both input and output. And you can see that parentheses, AIOC. If I click the drop-down menu here, you can see all the other audio devices that I have connected to my computer right now. Your listing will be different, but again, what you're looking for is what's listed in that parentheses, because that's going to indicate a little bit more information about the device that you're trying to connect to. All right, so with that set, here's my channel. We mentioned for the AIOC, we're doing the left and right. DigiRig would just be the left, and the DigiRig light would be the left and right again. Those are all set correctly. I'll go ahead and close that. I'm going to come over here to settings one more time, come down to push to talk. And here's that COM port setting. Now, I've already checked in my device manager. I see that COM port 6 is the correct COM port. I'll go ahead and select that there. And then here's my PTT. And I just, for this particular device, I need the DTR settings. And that's all I need there. So everything is looking good. But when I look at this indicator here, I can see that I'm in full red and there's a little levels indicator and it's fully pegged. So the way to be able to deal with that is you just take on the input. Let me see if I can get this in screen so you can see them both at the same time. So what you do is you just take the little volume indicator and you adjust the volume level. So as I'm just turning this knob, you can see that little level indicator is bouncing around to the right level. And what you're looking for is you're looking to get it to be right there at about 3/4 of signal strength. And when you get it set to that, you're golden. You're all set, ready to go. So at this point, I'm ready to try and make a connection to my gateway. I can come back over here. I'll just go ahead and click the start button. And if the demo gods are with me, we should go automatically into transmit mode. And we can see that the connection is going through, and it's going through. It's doing a check. It's looking to see, hey, do I have any email out there sitting on the Winlink gateway? In a second, it will go ahead and bring up the listing. I'm sure there's other ones that are in there. It's bringing up the listing here. It's actually pulling them in. It's got a pretty decent connection. There's only 4 of them right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect, and I'm not going to download any of those. I'm just going to go ahead and just basically cancel that out, let it finish this connection so we can see how all of that worked. And as it's going through, you can see it's actually checking to see overall how fast of a connection could it make and so forth. Of course, it's going to have a good connection because it's only transmitting from here to my roof where the antenna is located for my particular gateway. So that's all set up at that point. What I want to do now is I want to show, though, that once you get a particular device set up, this device, all of these settings are tied to your interface. They're not necessarily tied to the radio. The only thing you're setting on the radio is the frequency and the volume indicator and any unique settings in here. So it's just about finished. I'm going to actually go ahead and hit the stop button on this so it'll stop that session altogether. Now I'm going to turn my radio off. I'm going to disconnect my AIOC and I'm going to pull my antenna off of this radio. And I've got a couple of other radios here. So for instance, here's just a your basic Baofeng radio. It's a little UV5R. Go ahead and put the antenna on that. And I'm going to connect the AIOC to that radio. And I'll turn the volume on. And as soon as I do, you can see that my levels indicator jumped up to the right level. Again, I can adjust the level on my radio just using the little dial here at the top, and I can fine tune this until I get my levels, receive levels at exactly the right amount. All right, so I'm all set there. Let me go ahead and see if this will key the radio. I click start, and you can notice that my radio instantly goes into that transmit mode. It starts making the connection. You can see that Vara is making the connection to my gateway. Once again, I'm not going to wait for this to go through. I'm just going to go ahead and stop that. It should end that connection there. There we go. Now, does this only work with these low cost radios? Well, no, I'm going to go ahead and turn this off. Once again, I'll disconnect my antenna, take the AIOC out, and I have my Kenwood D74 here. So let me go ahead and plug the antenna into that radio. Open up the side and plug the AIOC into there. Set the antenna up, turn the power on. Maybe. Come on. There it goes. All right, so my radio shows up. My levels indicator actually shows up right to the correct level, but I can go ahead and adjust on this, the audio input level, and you can see I can drop that down or turn that back up so that it's set to just the right amount that I'm looking for here. Again, right to that about 3/4 mark. And once again, I'll just go ahead and click start. It says that the connection might be busy, but we'll go ahead and do that because already down at a ultra low level. and immediately it keys the radio and starts making that connection again. So everything is working. All I need to do is literally all you need to do is get your Vara set up correctly, Winlink set up correctly for a particular device. And then as long as you're swapping from one radio to another that uses the same type of connection ports and the same protocols, then it will just simply work, and you can change from one radio to another. This is a great way to have some spare radios, some backups or so forth. Maybe you've got a collection of different HTs that you want to be able to use. Maybe you've got just a simple backup radio that you're keeping in your vehicle, and for a really reasonable amount. So these I want to say are roughly around $40 or so. Same thing for the DigiRig Lite. The DigiRigs are a little bit more. They're about $45 or $50. The cable itself, you can pick those up from DigiRig. I want to say they're about $20 or $25 or so. This whole setup then is well under $100 for a simple little WinLink setup that can be used as a backup. Now, I'm using the signal stick antenna with mine right now. Let me zoom out a little bit more so you can see this. But you don't have to use just an HT antenna. You could use a roll-up Slim Jim or any other external antenna, in which case 5 watts is going to get you a lot further distance. So a lot of this is going to really depend on the overall setup, but this gets you a very good, very quick kind of setup. Now, normally I would switch over and just show you how to use the DigiRig. When I switch from one interface to another, what I'm finding is that I need to reboot my Windows system altogether once I've connected the other one in order to make all of that work. And we're going to go to Dan. Dan, were you able to get yours up and running again?
I was not.
Okay, so we moved around a whole bunch of different machines and a bunch of different changes just before the show. So instead of going through and walking through all the specifics on the DigiRig, what I want to do is I want to go over to Scott, because Scott, you've got the DigiRig Lite set up there as well. So let me start with, where's your setup here?
Yeah, if you'll go ahead and pin my radio up there, that'd be great.
Yep, there you go.
Okay, you guys can see my radio sitting here.
We can see it and we can hear you.
All right, so I'm going to kind of move over here. So there's the DigiRig Lite, right, sitting right there. As you can see it, it's got a green light on it telling me that it's operational and it's ready to go. And I'll go back over to the radio here. And I'm going to be using the Yaesu FT50. And then I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. And there it is. So, like Chris talked about, so I'm running the DigiRig Lite, and so in my settings, it's a COM port. I'm on COM 6 using RTS and DTS, and I am also using both left and right on the speaker. So we got all that set up, and if we watch the radio, we've got my VU meter is all set correctly. And again, if the demo gods are with us, I should be able to connect through my FT60. And there it goes, making a connection on that radio. I'll go ahead and stop it so I don't download anything. So that was using the DigiRig Lite, using those settings. And I can show you the settings here, just so you know. So in the sound card, wrong right here. So it's working great. Now I'm going to switch over to using the DigiRig. I'm going to switch over to the Anytone radio, and I'm going to go ahead and disconnect.
So for yours, you have 2 different cables here. So I was switching the whole interface. You're still using the DigiRig Lite. Yep. And you're just switching the cable. You've got a different cable connected between your Yaesu and your Anytone.
Right, I do. And I need to make some adjustments here. Things moved around here a little bit. So I need to go back over to my audio device. It's like audio left and right.
It's on the other screen.
Oh, sorry. I had to make an adjustment to my audio device. When I moved some things around here. Check my PTT here. I'll move it over so you can see it. Can you see that? There it is.
Yeah, we can do that.
So it's set for RTS and DTR, and it's set for 6. And if the demo gods are with us, and it should show on the radio. Oh, I have an issue on the audio level here.
Set your audio levels up.
Yep. So I have to make one quick adjustment.
Make sure you have your audio in set correctly on that settings. It looked like it was tied to your Shure microphone.
Let's go back and check. Nope, that's all good. Just let me make a quick adjustment here. It's an audio level issue, and the demo gods are never cooperative.
The joys of doing things live. So the real difference here is that what he's doing is he's got multiple different radios. He's having to swap the cables into a different device, and it ends up working pretty smoothly normally. Not sure where his little hang up is on that.
Yeah, I don't know where it's at right now either, but apparently it was working earlier, and now I'm not getting the audio connection through.
No worries. All right,
Scott, check that your cable is plugged securely into your radio.
Yeah,
That's
when you wiggle
problem.
the cable there, you had audio for a moment.
Yeah, that's a common problem with the Kenwood connectors that particularly in the Baofangs,
yep,
they just don't sit.
Yeah, I'm going to turn. Yeah, I'm having some difficulties with this one again.
Okay, no worries.
Right, so let me switch back over to the Yaesu. And you see that my levels are through the roof again. But there you go. I got them turned back down. And it's connecting to my gateway. So I just have a little bit of an adjustment issue. But there it is working with the FT50. I'll go ahead and stop it here. All right. I will go ahead and give it back over to you, Chris.
Great. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Just one comment, Chris. Something I found on the Baofangs and Quanshangs and those radios, it's really helpful to set your squelch level to 0 or maybe 1, but turning the squelch all the way down seems to solve a lot of problems.
For sure. Yeah, because that squelch level, if you don't have the squelch set to the correct setting, then it's going to ignore all of the audio that you're hearing.
Remember with that interface, you're using the speaker connection and the microphone connection and not a direct digital connection like you might on a mobile unit with a digital connector on it. So whatever controls your speaker, your volume control, and your squelch is also going to impact the audio for the sound card.
Right. Let's go over to David. David, when you have multiple different devices, what's the kind of pace plan that somebody may want to have with these different devices?
Sure, Chris, happy to talk about that. I'm going to switch over to my demo table here and talk about the solution that I have to have the most flexibility in the field and show you what I got. In my vehicle, I've got this bag, and I got a radio set up in the truck all the time. I don't have Winlink capability set while I'm driving because I don't want to pull a laptop out and use it out in the field, but I want to be able to have it when I stop. And so I got this bag in my truck, and what's in the bag is a solution that I have that I use for my vehicle, which is a signal link. There's always the cable plugged into the back of the radio there. It comes out in the center console. When I want to use it, I pull out the signal link, I plug it in, I take out my laptop, I use the USB connector, and that's great for when I stop, when I want to use that for a full 50-watt powered radio, and I can tune the power down on that. And I got a big battery in there, and it can last a long time, but there may be times where I don't want the truck running. I don't want to drain the battery out. And the solution I have for that, along in that bag that I'm showing you there, is I have this set of cables here. And what this set of cables has that I like is it has that Kenwood connector that will go in the back of the signal link and allow me to use any of these HTs that will support that Kenwood type connector in it. The nice thing about that cable specifically that comes from SignalLink, it's the same pin out as a 6-pin mini DIN. So if you have a mobile radio like a Yaesu or a Kenwood that uses that 6-pin mini DIN, all you need to do is unplug it, plug in the RJ45 connector into the back of the SignalLink that goes right into that radio slot, turn on the radio, and you're good to go. That way I can set up and I can leave my rig up in my truck by just plugging the SignalLink, turn on an HT, and the HT's got a battery that's going to last a real long time. I can plug in a laptop, and a laptop that I carry around in my truck all the time gets about 8 or 9 hours of battery life as long as it's fully charged. Set that up without having to worry about draining out my truck battery, and I can utilize the external antenna by, again, I've got a BNC connector here. I can pop this off and pop it onto the external antenna. And then that way I can scale up or down depending on either how much power I need or how much power I want to reserve or save, and be able to extend out the use that I have. So it's a really good way to think about sizing small, medium, or large. Also, the nice thing about this is I can just grab this bag if I need to get out of my vehicle and move away from it. It's got the SignalLink ready to go. It's got the cables ready to go. I grab my laptop, in that laptop bag, I got one of these radios, HTs, that fit this cable connector, and I'm ready to go. And I can set up pretty much anywhere that I can make a radio connection where I have good access to the outside. Obviously, some of the buildings that we work in, you're too far inside the building, but if I can get to an external wall, or I can get a site that's outside, I've got a good capability where I can run as long as my laptop battery will go, or as long as the HT battery will go. And then there's some other solutions for that. I can carry on a little portable solar panel or some external batteries that I can also, again, power my laptop or power these radios from. So lots of flexibility there. And you always want to be thinking about what are those solutions to go in the field, whether you can be with your vehicle or your Go box, or where you may need to leave that somewhere and move away and get yourself out in the field.
Excellent. Hey, thanks a lot, David. Let's go ahead and check in and see what check-ins have come in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do another couple of quick checks here just to make sure we've gotten all of the check-ins downloaded. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your check-in, now would be a good time to be able to do that. And we'll just click start one or two more times, make sure we've gotten all the check-ins. I've been checking in the background quite a bit to get everything downloaded. With that, let me come back over here to the main version of Winlink, and I'm going to come up here to the toolbar, click on the little map icon. What that's going to do, if the demo gods are with me, there we go. It's going to open up the maps and CSV KML files and forms. And this is where you're able to map any of the forms that you have received into your copy of Winlink. You just click the little drop down here, and it'll show you all the forms that your copy of Winlink has received and that are all built in. If you want to see how this looks just see how the maps work for you, you can, of course, come down here to where it says messages, and you can map all of the messages that you've received into your Winlink account, and it'll work similar to what I'm going to show you. But if you're working with a different group that maybe you're receiving the forms for your group, then you'll be able to do this detailed mapping here. So what you want to do is go ahead and select the template that you want to see. So I'm going to use Winlink check-in V5. And then down here at the bottom, just click the button that says Display Map. I'm going to blow that out to full screen so we can get a nice overview of the overall world as to who sent in their check-ins. And I'll just roll over quite a few of these. We've got Kilo Hotel 6 uniform checking in from Hawaii. Aloha to you. Thank you very much for joining us, Bill. Looks like we've got Victor Kilo 2, Sierra Kilo Yankee joining us from Sydney. Great to see that. This looks like Roland Delta Golf 1 Golf Hotel Radio. Notice if you click on one of these, it'll bring you up all of the details of that particular check-in. He's sending in his check-in via Pactor. Here's another station here, Sierra Mike 7 Oscar Yankee Echo, joining us from Sweden. And now I'm going to do is you can see some of these have a purple color to them. Others have a blue pin. And the way that we're coloring that, if I come up here to filters, you can come down and you can see for the band and the session. So all those that are showing up in purple, the last check-in that came in from that operator came in via Telnet. If they've used RF in one form or another, then their check-in is going, their pin is going to be blue. So I'll go ahead and hit save on that. We could, of course, change these to a different color if we wanted to. I'm going to zoom in on North America a little bit. To pan the map, you just right click and drag, and that allows you to drag around on the map so you can get into a little bit better position. We'll go ahead and roll over all of these check-ins here so folks can see that we did get your check-in. Now, if you sent in a check-in to us and you're not seeing yourself on the map, then a couple of things could be going on. First, if you have previously saved your settings inside of Winlink for a particular check-in form, then what you may need to do is you might need to update that, because sometimes when a new form comes out, the saved settings will oftentimes not appear on a map. So you might need to update that. If you also sent in a check-in, you're here inside of the Zoom and our live audience, then and you're not seeing yourself on the map, then bring it up during the after party, where we'll open up the mics and everybody will be able to ask some questions. We've got quite a few operators here in this area. We'll look at, let's zoom in a little bit in the Pacific Northwest. Again, right click and drag in order to zoom that window. And as you just roll over each one, it will bring up the little pin to show you the information. There's Bill, AC7SR. Great to see you there joining us. So we've got 2 in there, another one right here. Come down here to Southern Oregon. Let's go ahead and zoom into Southern California and the Southwest. Let me zoom in a little tighter there. We've got quite a few stations up here in the Sacramento area, sending in all of their check-ins as well. Roll over each of these so that folks can see that we did, in fact, get your check-in. We'll roll over each of these in the Vegas area as well. There we go. A little bit outside of the LA area, there's Logan KD6LLB. Now, I should say, if you go onto wavetalkers.com, right now it's on the front page of WaveTalkers, there is a PDF file that you can download, and it's got all the details of setting up this AIOC along with using one of the Quansheng radios. And that instructions was put together by Logan, KD6LLB, and Norm, another good friend of ours. And he came up with a lot of the ways to be able to use, making sure that you have the orientation of the cables set in different orientations, coming up with all the different configurations to make a lot of this work. So the two of them work together to get a lot of those details worked out. We really appreciate them sharing that information with all of us as well, so all of you can get on here. So there's the quick run through of the map. Let me go ahead and jump back out into the booth at this point, and we'll bring the guys back up onto screen, and we'll go around real quick and take any closing thoughts that folks have. Let me bring Scott up. David, let's start with you. W0DHG. Any closing thoughts from today?
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility. It's great to have like a low power option in your bag. And so, get one of these interfaces, whether it's, a new interface that's dedicated to it, like the stuff that Chris and Scott showed, or look at the stuff that you already have to see how you can maybe just add a cable, to do what I did, what I showed you that goes along with my truck or my portable Go kit. I think it was all of a $15 cable that I was able to add to my solution to be able to run off of a low powered HT that can give me a lot more battery life and let me work in the field and take it out in the field and practice and test it before you actually need it. So you know how it's going to work, what you need to do, how you need to adjust it.
Thanks, David. Dan, NR6V.
Well, first of all, I apologize that my demo didn't work out. It worked perfectly this morning when I set it up, but when I moved it into this room, could not get pushed to talk to operate properly. So that was going to be the FT60 Yaesu with the DigiRig. So Scott pretty much covered that with his Yaesu. But Yeah, this is a really good, flexible way to do things. You can often carry this stuff in a pouch that is really readily carryable. Use it with a tablet or a small laptop, and you can have a very compact, easy to carry Winlink setup. And as David does, carry it in your car so you always have Winlink with you.
Thanks, Dan. Scott, KM6
Okay.
RFB.
Okay, so while Chris was talking, I found out what my problem was on the Anytone. The squelch was turned on. And I can only change it in the programming software, so I couldn't go back and do it. So I figured out what the issue was. So I switched and went to the Quan chain, and wouldn't work. So I turned everything. I turned off Vara and Winlink and restarted it, and the Quan chain worked beautifully using the DigiRig Lite. So everything worked great. It's just I didn't have the squelch turned off on the Anytone, and I can't do it from the programming very easily. That radio is not very user friendly from the front end. But again, low cost options. These DigiRigs work remarkably well. At least the DigiRig Lights, I've had no issues with them, and I've got it working on the Quan chain. The Anytone I will get working, and then the Yaesu. And my next goal is to get working on the ICOM. So great product. I think it was like $39 for the DigiRig Lite, and it makes using a handheld very easy out in the field if you had to.
Yeah, it's really nice to have a variety of these different options. If you're just getting started, this is a great path to get yourself started, being able to use some of the low-cost radios, low-cost equipment, and then as you maybe move up and you get more experience, more uses that you might need, then look at purchasing some of the other higher end gear. But all this stuff works really well. I mean, I'm really blown away by the DigiRig, the cabling. The cabling that they make is first rate. It is absolutely the best cables that I've been finding across the board. So you can order those directly, again, from DigiRig, or you can go straight onto Amazon. You can get them. We'll put some links in the description for this on YouTube, as well as on our website. I did notice somebody asked a question on the website. Where is the link to that? Let me switch over to my screen real quick. And when you go to wavetalkers.com, eventually it'll get moved up here into the live section here in the upper right-hand corner. But currently, if you go right on the front page, right underneath of today's episode, you'll see a link to that PDF right here. I'll go ahead and bring that PDF up.
Hey, Chris, if you want, I can demo the Quan chain using the DigiRig. It's stuff to work with.
That's okay. We'll do that in the after party.
Okay.
Here's the PDF. Again, Logan put this together. He did a really nice job documenting all the information that's in here. It really walks you through all the different settings that are in here. And again, this is up on our website. A big thanks to him for doing that, putting that together and sharing it with all of you. If you found any of this information helpful, consider going on to wavetalkers.com. There's a buy us a coffee link, and it helps us keep the lights on. You can also go onto YouTube, and you can make sure you like the video, leave us a comment, and let us know if you found any of this information helpful, what setup that you're using as well. We'll pick it up again next week. If you're here inside of the Zoom, hang around. We're going to do the after party here. So, where we open up the mics, you can ask your questions, and we'll do that. If you want to join us in the after party at any point, go to wavetalkers.com. There's a join us link on every single page. You fill it out. We send the email out that has the link to the live Zoom audience. You're able to join us there and then participate in the after party. With that, we'll say 7-3 to everyone, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks a lot. And we're off.